I've opened up a blank Power BI file. So the first thing I need to do is actually tell it where my data is. So I'm going to import data from Excel, point to my forecast data, and if we give it a second, it's going to load a preview for us of what is actually in that file. So if I put a tick mark here, we can see it's exactly what we were looking at in Excel, where our data is spread across the months. If I load it, it's going to come in as is, so I want to transform my data. And again, it's going to show me a preview of my information. So if I highlight January, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and pick December, and that selects all 12 columns for me. And if you look up here in the transform section, there's something that says unpivot columns, and it has a few choices. Unpivot columns is what I'm going to pick because I selected the columns that I want to unpivot. If I had only selected that first column that had the item number, I do have a choice to pick unpivot all other columns. And then I also have the option, a third one, to unpivot only the selected columns. But again, since I've picked January to December, those are the columns I want to unpivot, so I would click here. Now you can see that Power Query has created a column that's put all of the months into one, and it's created an attribute column for us, and then it's put the value over in this column. Now this lends itself a little better for us to be able to plot this chart. So I'm going to close and apply. And if we take a look at our data, we'll see we have this. Now, this isn't very intuitive, so it's kind of nice to rename this. We'll call it month. But now we'll also notice if we were to go create a chart right now of this data, and suppose I'm going to put just a simple line chart, and I'd like the month on the x-axis, and I'd like the value on the y-axis. So what does this do? Take a look at the x-axis. It's not exactly in order, and that's because that column is just text. It has no idea that we actually want to interpret that as a date. So we need to add a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a date, and it's going to be in text, but we're going to transform it in just a second. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to concatenate the month, so that's going to pull in, for example, in that first line, the word January. And I'm going to add a space. I'm just going to do the first of the month because I'm not actually going to plot by day. And let's assume our year is 2022. So now we've got something that looks a little more like a complete date, but again, if we click on this column, you can see it thinks it's text, and we actually want it to be a date. So we can flip the type here, and now Power BI interprets this as a date. Now you can actually change the format. This one's put a day of the week on there that we don't really need, but you have a few options up here. So let's just pick this one for a short date. Okay, so now all of our months are the first of every month. Now, if we go back to our chart, and we get rid of just that month text, and now we've actually got a date where we have a hierarchy. It has a year, a quarter, a month, and a day. So if I select that date and now put it in the x-axis, you can see it's plotting the year, so it's going to default to the highest structure, and we can actually filter down. So this one would give me a chart by quarter. If I keep going, I'm going to get a chart by month. So now you can see it's actually in order and it knows what the date is. And you can proceed to format that however you wish from this point on. If you prefer to use Excel, I'll show you the beginning of how this starts because the rest is exactly the same. So we are going to connect to our data. We have an Excel workbook. Pick our forecast file. When it loads, just like Power BI, we're going to click Transform Data. And exact same, we're going to highlight January over to December, and on Transform, we're going to pick Unpivot the columns. From there, you just follow the exact same steps that I showed you in Power BI.